Welcome back to Gardener's History Garden's AP World History Podcast Deep Dives. I'm your host, and today we're going to journey back to the world of castles, knights, plagues, and cathedrals, the realm of medieval Europe. This was an era that lasted roughly from 500 to 1500 CE, stretching from the fall of the Roman Empire to the dawn of the Renaissance. It was a time of war and faith, of feudal lords and peasant revolts, of soaring cathedrals and devastating plagues. But more than just swords and serfs, medieval Europe laid the foundations for the modern world in ways you may not expect. How did feudalism shape society? What role did the church play in everyday life? And how did this so-called Dark Age ultimately lead to the explosion of knowledge and progress? Let's step into the medieval world and find out. Imagine Europe in the late 5th century. The Western Roman Empire has collapsed. Its once mighty cities now crumbling. Trade routes have broken down, roads fall into despair, and literacy declines. Without the centralized government of Rome, Europe fractures into small, warring kingdoms. This period, often called the Early Middle Ages, saw the rise of Germanic tribes like the Franks, Visigoths, and Anglo-Saxons, who carved out new territories. One of the most significant figures of this time was Charlemagne, the king of the Franks, who, in 800 CE, was crowned Holy Roman Emperor by the Pope. His reign brought a brief revival of learning and stability, but after his death, Europe once again splintered into smaller feudal states. With no strong central government, a new system emerged: feudalism. A social and political structure that would define medieval life for centuries. Feudalism is a hierarchical system based on land, loyalty, and military service. At the top was the king, who granted land to powerful lords or nobles in exchange for their loyalty. These lords in turn divided their land among vassals, including knights, who swore to protect their lands into battle. At the top of the system were the peasants or serfs, who worked the land in return for protection. Life for the average peasant was tough. Most lived in small villages, worked long hours farming, and had little freedom. Society was structured and rigid, but it provided stability in an otherwise chaotic world. Feudalism wasn't just about politics, it was deeply tied to warfare. With constant conflicts over land and power, castles became the medieval world's skyscrapers, symbols of strength and defense. While kings and lords ruled the land, the Catholic Church was the true unifying force of medieval Europe. The Church provided not only spiritual guidance, but also education, law, and social services. The Pope in Rome was the most powerful religious figure, and below him were cardinals, bishops, and priests who governed religious life across Europe. Monasteries became centers of learning, preserving ancient texts that would later spark the Renaissance. The Church also had immense political influence. It would excommunicate rulers, launch crusades, and even control kings through the divine right, which claimed that monarchs ruled by God's will. Speaking of the Crusades, these religious wars fought between 1096 and 1291 aimed to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim rule. They failed militarily, but had profound consequences, increasing trade, cultural exchange, and even helping to end feudalism by shifting power away from local lords. In the mid-14th century, Europe faced one of its deadliest crises, the Black Death. This bubonic plague, spread by fleas on rats, wiped out nearly one-third of Europe's population between 1347 and 1351. Entire villages vanished, labor shortages crippled economies, and faith in both government and the church was shaken. But the Black Death also transformed society with fewer workers. Serfs gained more bargaining power, wages rose, and feudalism began to crumble. Cities grew, trade expanded, and people started questioning traditional authority, setting the stage for the Renaissance and the rise of the new middle class. By the late Middle Ages, feudalism was declining, monarchs were centralizing power, and new ideas were spreading thanks to the printing press. The 100 Years' War lasted from 1337 to 1453. Between England and France, further weakened the feudal order, as new weapons like the longbow and gunpowder changed medieval warfare forever. The Renaissance from the 14th to 17th century, which began in Italy, marked the end of the medieval world and the beginning of the modern age. Art, science, and exploration flourished, and thinkers like Leonardo da Vinci, Galileo, and Shakespeare emerged. Medieval Europe had been a time of hardship and war, but also of incredible resilience and progress. So, was the Middle Ages truly a dark age? While it had its fair share of war, disease, and social rigidity, it also laid the groundwork for the modern world. It was a time of transformation shaping the political, religious, and cultural structures that still influence us today. Thanks for joining me on this journey through medieval Europe. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like and subscribe and leave a review. Next time, we're going to explore another civilization that's shaped history. Until then, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep history alive.